the widest hero pools in the game so far. Mantis, Wolverine, Storm, Torch, Psylocke, Winter Soldier, Emma Frost. They had a role swap at one point. They are incredibly difficult to ban against, but they've also been known to give up Magneto from time to time, and we're going to see that immediately with Zero Tenacity getting it handed over to them.
Yeah, this seems to be how the general start of these drafts go, trying to focus on getting one of the vanguards of Emma Frost, Magneto, or the other. But we're also starting to see a lot more where the Magneto was protected, Loki coming in instead. So that's why there's a lot more focus, I suppose, from Team Peps to take it out early, to just make sure that the likes of Winnie can't necessarily grab onto it. And so far, this like first phase of the pick bans, Tetra, looking fairly standard for now.
Everything looking pretty normal. You did mention, though, they protected the Emma over the Loki, but went for the target ban. Zero Tenacity, they're going to remove the very big rising star of EMEA, Cloak and Dagger. Moxie will be pleased. And Loki also getting hovered, but this does leave open Luna, for example. Invisible Woman is still here. Mantis and Star still available. There are plenty of options still available.
Yeah, it's also worth adding that the first pick and these picks are simultaneous. So we might see them lock in a bit earlier, but for the teams actually in the server, they won't see it until the very, very end. So it's a bit of a game of chicken to see what exactly is going to happen and what the fallout's going to be. Team Peps actually looking to save onto the Lunar Snow, maybe for Aura Steeler, maybe for Larry. I don't know how much they've actively tried to protect it themselves. A couple of times. I think it's Oasis that's going to be potentially up against it if they're not careful. And the Punisher save, I mean, when you've got players like Knuten that can pick it up, Smashnez has also not been too afraid to play it themselves. It means that you have a lot of flexibility with the comps that Zero Tenacity want to run, and that's where they look the scariest.
Plenty of options here. We're going to see that Mantis taken away with that Punisher on the board, removing the damage boost, making sure that Zero Tenacity can't just try and steamroll with that Punisher Final Judgment, so just rush on through. With that Human Torch banned away as well, though, we may see a little bit of flexibility. Yes, we are. Zero Tenacity, they've already showed it once before. They're bringing back, well, actually a couple times before, they're bringing back the Namor with Lugia. Going to be one of our main Hulk players within the region, bringing it back out for a second round.
Yeah, Lugia more, I guess, focused on the melee vanguards with a little bit of Wolverine thrown in for a tank busting action themselves. But yeah, that torch ban is a good one because it not only hits like Knuten that can pick up any flyers like Iron Man and stuff, but Smashnez especially. And I think there was maybe an over focus on trying to get Smashnez off of the Human Torch from Pat's Pim in the finals last week that gave them a lot more space in the draft. So Peps have come into this one pretty prepped. And this isn't a bad map for them either as we go to Hell's Heaven. It's the only domination map that we've seen them play. It's a randomly assigned map. We know it's always going to be domination, but it could be obviously Hell's Heaven, but in T'Challa, Krakoa. It's almost always been, no, it has always been Hell's Heaven for Peps, and they're 3-1 on it. And for the side of Z10, they've lost it once.
We'll have to see if they're able to turn that round, even up the score of Team Peps will continue, like you mentioned, their very strong run. There is a portal engage coming in, and Knuten is out of there. Not wanting to get caught out. Lugia is not so lucky, though. Will be popped down into battle form and then picked off. Leaf with the damage boost, even with that ultimate nerf, the Storm will be making their way onto the board. Damage boost onto Hardest, so they can go in hard with that Punisher. And of course, that Omega Hurricane, even though it is harder to charge up now, is still ridiculously strong.
Got the Storm playing in, recently nerfed, but the damage boost is still going to be effective. And it's really a case of like Hardest building up that Final Judgment as much as possible, as long as possible. Really not too much of an engage happening so far. Like Lugia was the one that dove in and got instantly deleted. Terra Keep actually coming through, so this is Zero Tenacity trying to go for a good fight here, but it's them mostly going down to low HP. They are able to take out Leaf, who's over on that Storm. Smashnez able to catch him on the Namor. But Peps holding on, Beetle taking a lot of damage, but it's really just stocking up these strategist ultimates, Tetra.
Hard is being forced to back up, but is sniped by Smashnez, who is crazy good on this Namor, like you said, able to take these flanking positions and then able to target down these backliners from an off angle. In this case, playing from the low ground to make sure that they can get those shots onto Hardest, forcing Leaf off of that storm. They're bringing out the Winter Soldier to try and isolate that Hulk. If they can keep them CC'd with the Bionic Hook and the Soldier's Fist, then they can try and interrupt those jump outs, keep Hulk in place, and drop them down into battle form.
Lunar Snow, Ultimates, Strategists, and the Final Judgments all thrown on top of each other. So you've got on one side Hardest being able to mow down and get the picks all the way through. That Eternal Bond from Winnie. And the invisible boundary for Aura Stealer, keeping people going, but this is still Zero Tenacity able to keep progression working. We do see the Eye of Agamotto used from Beetle. I'm only connecting onto Ducky, I think, but as we're seeing, the Fate of both worlds and the Meteor M about to follow through. Can it get a catch for the shields? No, it can. And Team Peps are throwing a lot of stuff at this one. The Psionic Seduction coming through now from Peps to try to take the objective, but Zero Tenacity still having a hold. Every ultimate from Peps is being thrown in here, Tetcher, and Zero Tenacity with Lugia still holding on.
Lugia just absolutely monster moded that, realizing that their team still had control of the point. They were willing to sacrifice their ultimate to buy time, and they ended up buying enough time for their team to reinforce and nearly taking a 2v1 of their own. They have 3 final hits on this Hulk and held the point for Zero Tenacity. Now it is 27 to 79 in favor of Zero Tenacity, and they are holding control and have the defensive position with Punisher and Namor. That's going to be so hard to push into.
I think for Peps it's a lot harder. Like, having invisible boundary is one of your strategist ultimates. Good when you have the objective, you can just sit on top of it, but taking that space is really difficult, especially when you got a final judgment thrown down. There is no strategists available for Team Peps to really sort of sustain this, so everybody has to back up. They have to respect the space, and actually there was almost too much respect given. Knuten diving in, Leaf is able to get the catch, but overtime has hit 99%, and Team Peps, even if they do take this point, Zero Tenacity might let them to an extent to just refresh these ultimates and try and go for a nice clean fight to finish off.
That's exactly what we're seeing. Full retreat coming out of Zero Tenacity, waiting for their vanguards to respawn as both Lugia and Ducky were taken out. They can now regroup and make their way in. Still holding on to that horde of Proteus and the Eternal Bond for the setup, and they almost have Fate of both worlds. But Team Peps, they do have counters. Invisible Boundary, Fate of both worlds, Eye of Agamotto, and Hardest is a full 90%, a full 60% up on Newton as they already have their final judgment.
There's a lot of ultimates for Peps here that can make this fight an uncomfortable one if Zero Tenacity don't have things lined up well. Like, sure, strategist ultimates all available, but if Lugia gets picked off and taken out like that, it might not matter. You have the advantages there, and now Smash there is trying to loom and flank a little bit more. It's going to focus that Doctor Strange shield over in that direction, and that's incredibly aggressive actually coming in from DRP to just claim some of that space. Now Leaf is able to find an opening, and you can sort of see Hardest trying to posture himself with that final judgment. It's going to come out at the same time as the counter from Knuten, and Knuten actually taking out everybody through the Lunar Fate of both worlds. He's able to out-sustain it, but the Eye of Agamotto catching on to 3 for Zero Tenacity just gives Team Peps enough room to take this. Meteor M with everything going on, Tetcher. Everything that is available for both sides going to be used on this first point.
Going in for the big delay. The difference is there is Portal available for Beetle to bring the team back. Smashnez has swapped to Strange for the reinforce. Monster Hulk for delay once again, and everyone is committed to try to buy the time. Here comes the Portal coming out from Zero Tenacity for the reinforcements, while in the meantime everyone is forced off the points, locking them off the objective with that Monster Hulk crowd control with the Hulk smash. Allows Zero Tenacity to claim point number 1.
Yeah, very back and forwards. We sort of knew that both these teams were going to have a closer series than it might look on paper. And like Craggy said in the interview, this first game can be a lot of focus on individual performance. And I have to be looking, I think, at like Larry and Aura Stealer. Certainly Larry, the amount of healing that he's been able to do, you can see that Knuten's leading with damage, but it really comes down to the out-sustain. As a reminder, that Cloak and Dagger not available for Team Peps at all. They're having to go for Aura on the Invisible Woman, but Aura is so good at that character, even when the ultimate does less healing than the majority of like Lunar Snows or Cloak and Daggers, they are still so individually good with their utility, they can make it work still.
They've been using this cloak and dagger Zero Tenacity have. As you mentioned, they did not have it banned out against them compared to Team Peps, so they've been able to get themselves in with these Terror Capes to try and set up for Knuten with these final judgments. And then it's just been the game of which of the protecting characters. Ducky, if they've been able to get these shields onto Knuten, they've usually won the fight. But on the odd occasion, Harness has been able to time it well and has won the duel. As once again, Team Peps, with these incredibly aggressive rollouts, will get the first pickup.
Whether they can hold on to the point long enough, because just giving it up once on that first part of the objective was enough for Zero Tenacity to take it all the way. You also have to say for Zero Tenacity, Ducky not being able to be on the Emma Frost is a nerf, because they are a fantastic Emma Frost, but they've had to move over as teams have realized just how much focus goes onto it. Magneto's going to work in the right areas. And certainly if he can synergize well to Legia, that we haven't seen much Hulk action in the EMEA, maybe in other regions, but not so much here. You don't want to be too much of a sponge to let Hardest just farm up these final judgments for free.
Flank coming in from Zero Tenacity on the low ground as once again Team Peps have the defensive position, utilizing this Goddess boost for a little bit of speed currently for Hardest to make sure that they can stay mobile, and of course that Doctor Strange can push in and out when needed without dropping it too low. Here comes the commitment from Ducky, but forced down to the low ground as the flank comes on in. Ayamagamoto from Beetle to try and lock it down, but Media M interrupted on the half cooldown, and Mega Hurricane going to look for the counter, but the Eternal Bond to try and delay it, to try and outlast an indestructible guard from the Hulk is buying time, and it is Zero Tenacity turning on that completely, seeing the Omega Hurricane. They group together in the shields, in the heals, and they wipe them.
Just through all of those ultimates too, you got a Fate of Both Worlds from Larry used at the end there. And Omega Hurricane, it doesn't matter too much if you have more HP. Knuten's still going to absolutely tear through you with that final judgment if he's given that space. And I don't think there was any real other damage boost there. It was just combined with that Horn of Proteus. Everybody grouped up together, enough burst to just make them more vulnerable and susceptible to the damage. And now Beetle, yeah, interrupted with the Ayamagamoto before, so he's got it again. Pretty much farmed up that 50%. You can see the positioning here is very good. It's very bunkered down for Zero Tenacity as they've taken that point. And now the ultimate coming out of Hulk to just buy a bit more time to be a lot more disruptive and just keep Peps on the back foot whilst this keeps churning up for Z10.
The Monster Hulk dropped down to 100 HP, but gets away with it. Now dropping down to the low ground, healed back up, trying to turn onto Beetle, who, like you mentioned, has that Ayamagamoto. A radioactive lockdown or that snowball from Lunar Snow could be a fantastic interrupt here. Also, the mag cannon from Magneto could be a hold, but he's pulled on in, nearly getting dropped down. Here comes the Ayamagamoto onto Knuten, but the Fate of Both Worlds is keeping them up. Not so lucky for Winnie, though, who is picked off by Leaf as they try to push on back, but it's Zero Tenacity, even though they're down a member, going for the counter, picking up Harness, Horn of Proteus into the boundary, and they're just dropping all that damage, but they can't see their targets.
You do have a Fate of Both Worlds if you need it for Peps, but you want to hold on to it, and Leaf just used the Kraken's impact, but was taken down from Smash Nails. He's been finding so many picks, but now it's going the other direction. DRP able to just clear up the objective, does have the Silent Seduction. But Peps managing to take the point before it gets to 99%. They have a lot of good stuff to hold on to this. Really, it comes down to a case of like how impactful Winnie can be with this Eternal Bond. How aggressive do you want to be? Because outside of the Meteor M, you don't have much ultimate-wise to work with in comparison.
Culling turret goes down. They were utilizing Guardian Barrier and that Sephirim shield from the Doctor Strange. They will back up a little bit here to give Zero Tenacity a little bit of space so they can re-engage when needed as Ducky gets pulled on in, has to use that Iron Bulwark for the protection. Mag Barrier, here comes the Eternal Bomb to create the pathway to open on in, and immediately the Fate of Both Worlds to match as Ducky is sniped by Beetle.
A free ultimates dedicated in this fight for Peps, but it makes sense if they can just keep things cleared up. Ducky actually just coming back from spawn. Is it going to switch over? That's a great Ayamagamoto from Beetle. And there's the follow through. Ducky having to switch over to the Strange. The portal play required. So it means that Leaf has got a few more targets to try and clear this. Is there going to be an attempt for Z10 to be able to fight this a little bit more? Sure, you have the Doctor Strange here, but he's all on his lonesome. Look at him. Some healing and more support coming in to just keep him alive, to keep a bit more time in the chain for Z10 here. But Leaf isn't allowing stuff. Knuten bringing out the final judgment, isn't really allowed to touch the point at all, so this only works out more for Peps. They bring us on as even, and we're going to a third point.
threaded in one by one. Team Peps able to take the control, especially due to that incredible flanking Eye of Agamotto from the side of Beetle, able to get onto both the Luna and the Punisher, taking down Knuten and Oasis early in that fight, meaning they had a huge numbers advantage, and then it was all about the staggers. Ducky having to swap over to that Strange, but by that point, Lugi is down, and everyone is just coming back one by one. Team Peps at that point, it was just playing until that portal expired, and they did so beautifully.
It's just, again, the damage that Knuten is able to throw out. How much is it able to sort of go to, like, getting the final judgment into confirms, really? That's the key thing. Like, we've seen a couple more of those, like, so much focus goes onto it. I feel like I'm just yabbering on, but that seems to be just the main play. Get your Punisher, damage boost him, debuff the opponents, win. That's pretty much the go-to for these teams, but it's down to a fine margin when you're playing in these domination maps. And because Zero Tenacity used so much towards the end there, they're missing the likes of a final judgment for Knuten. They do have a Fate of Both Worlds ready to go, and hardest, the portal play means that this could be a rude awakening for Zero Tenacity if they're not careful.
Hulk Smash is at the ready as well, so they could try and just go for a big aggressive dive. Like you mentioned, Kraken Impact, Invisible Boundary, plenty of tools for Team Peps to try and defend if an aggressive move out comes in from Zero Tenacity. While we do see Team Peps on that low ground playing defensive, Zero Tenacity are hyper committing to this high ground, and again, Beetle is utilizing this Cloak of Levitation incredibly aggressively to meet them where they are. Monster Hulk has to come out for Lugia as they try to keep everyone zoned into this doorway. Gonna get the lockdown onto Hardest. Eye of Agamotto into the backline. Only stuns out Ducky, but the ultimates are staggered a little bit there. We saw Winnie getting that Eternal Bond a little bit during Oasis's Fate of Both Worlds, so they did overlap a bit mid they have this time. So Aura Stealer, Invisible Boundary comes on out for a little bit of extra protection, and Zero Tenacity lose their defenses earlier.
What a block there to stop the Meteor M from catching much, but I think it's Leaf that's actually been the one to find the openings. These teams would fight for eons if available because they're just so good at keeping themselves going and keeping these fights long-lasting. But the Kraken impact for Leaf was enough to just find the picks to get the resets. And the point finally in the hands of Team Peps. Lucky for Z10 that Team Peps weren't able to grab it early considering they went for the portal play. That could have been the 99% with how long that last fight was.
It was a long fight. There was Tenacity getting in there in time, but like you said, it came down to just how long it kept going. With Zero Tenacity burning their defensive tools a little bit earlier, Team Peps were able to turn that round, utilizing that Kraken impact right at the end of the extra couple seconds from Aura Stealer on that Invisible Boundary. Now, we are going to see a little bit of a flank. Smashness and Lugia looking for some flanking potential to see if they can grab anyone on the side. Leaf does see him and is trying to send in a couple early shots and is currently on squid duty.
All the damage taken for Leaf, but the sustain is there to just keep them alive. Final Judgment, that's a bit too much of an ask, it looks like, especially when you've got the rest of the team being able to dive on it. And then the Fate of Both Worlds afterwards, a little bit late from Larry. A bit more unfortunate that I thought it was just, okay, Peps are going to have to just give up the point, but that's one of your big strategist ultimates gone for the time being. Just as the objective is starting to rotate, look how much damage Knuten has done, 30k. And it's requiring 50k's worth of healing from Larry to keep people going on the side of Peps. So that mistake could cost him. Larry has been the saving grace, and without a big ultimate for these next few fights, could be scary for Peps.
Knuten using that Scourge Grenade to back up a little bit, trying to focus onto Beetle. They know they probably have that Eye of Agamotto available at this point. Here comes the hyper commitment, and there is that Eye of Agamotto, but great protection from the Fate of Both Worlds is not enough to protect Lugia. That battle form is a little bit too weak. It's going to be a Punisher taken down though for Hardest as they are locked in, but it's the commitment from Team Peps as they push in so aggressively. DRP is deep in that backline and is trying to create an opening, but they're starting to get concaved on, will be forced to back away as Aura Stealer sniped on the backline. Beetle is getting closed in on it. Zero Tenacity making space. Final Judgment to push on in.
He's getting absolutely mowed down. His shields are just dropping like flies as Knuten having enough about him. Even the Bulwark to just stop him from being CC'd. Knuten has found a lot of space here and 70% on the board for Zero Tenacity. Team Peps using a lot. Need to build up some of these more like duelist-centric ultimates. And hope that there's enough space and enough time, because now Zero Tenacity looking in pole position after that play.
Hardest has decided that they are done with the Punisher, decided it's time to duel. The Star-Lord coming on in without Adam, without Mantis, going hard on the commit here as Knudsen is going to be taken off of that culling turret. Monster Hulk and Eternal Bond are ready with everything else slowly creeping up. Monster Hulk going to be dropped for zoning potential as they're already on 97%. The commitment has to be made by Peps as Beetle is getting juggled right now into the backline alone, and taking down that Strange is going to remove on to the front line, but Smashnez is chased on down and picked off to make that a 1-for-1. Kraken it back into the backline with the invisible boundary to keep them alive to look for the resets, but they're still going to be taken down by Ducky.
Larry's had to use the fate of both worlds, and you got the invisible boundary, so Peps not having much left. Just as Knudsen gets another final judgment, the Psionic Seduction from DRP trying to keep him under control, but he's looking to see if he can find any players in the nooks and the crannies that are hiding away from him. Aura Stealer eventually taking him down, but now it's just bodies on the point for Zero Tenacity. Peps struggling to make this engagement. Eye of Agamotto going to connect onto 2, but the fight is pulling away from the objective, and that's not good for Peps. They need to keep contesting as much as they possibly can, and Zero Tenacity are just not going down. There's Knudsen, but the trades are going the other direction. Zero Tenacity able to hold on, but Peps pushed him all the way over on this domination.
That is going to be Zero Tenacity taking game number 1, but like you said, that was close. A little bit of back and forth earlier on in those fights with Team Peps forcing them off those dives onto the backline. But the second we started seeing Knudsen finding those shots onto Beetle, they took a lot more control, focusing hard onto that Strange, really gave them a lot less space to move around, forcing an earlier Eye of Agamotto, allowing a bit more of a dive from the people who were able to absorb it into the backline. That Namor did pretty solid work. It's, again, not a character we see too often, but 23k damage. That's keeping up with Leaf and Hardest pretty effectively with 10 final hits. Only going to take it down 9 times, which is about average in this game. It worked out quite well while also defending the backline.
And that's the tricky thing really here. When you look at the bans again, you've gone for the torch, you want to take it off Smashnez, but and you see Z10 taking out the Cloak and Dagger there, and it really did feel like if one team has Cloak and Dagger and the other one's on Invisible Woman, the healing output just flat out can't compare. It just can't. Like, the AoE healing that's available, I think, to Cloak and Dagger really puts her in an advantage in game modes like this. I think if we go to the payload-centric maps, you know, Convergence, Convoy, maybe Invisible Woman can find a lot more success there. But it really did feel as Zero Tenacity set up the draft really well, and they have enough scary elements about them that Team Peps had to respect it. They tried taking up the torch, they tried taking up the Mantis to stop Knudsen going over to the Alan Warlock, and they did that, but then you're just not able to beat them in a straightforward 2-2-2 setup. Like, that's how good the Zero Tenacity team is, and that's why they were able to top their group. It's pick your poison. What do you want to deal with? Triple strategist? Do you want to deal with a Human Torch, or do you want to deal with just that damage output coming in from Knudsen and Smashnez?
Knudsen did so much work, like you said, with that damage output, with that targeting, but I think a lot of this has to go over to Lugia. They played this Hulk, a character who we do not see very often, as you called earlier, but they played this so aggressively. Monster Hulk as almost as an engage tool. You see your opponents grouped up in one doorway, about to try and move in to step on the point, just leaping in there and using the fact that those main attacks are knockback in that Monster Hulk form, allowing you to control those entranceways and just make it so that no one can get to your backline. In the meantime, Knudsen's just sitting there, unleashing all kinds of pain upon your front line while they're just getting juggled in the sky. And maybe if you get lucky, you get some situation like you saw in that last map with Beetle, just getting absolutely sent from where their team is to the other side of the point, just being juggled by the Hulk autos. Lugia had so much control over entrances, they absolutely deserve a shout out.
For sure, and I think it's nice to see the Z10, even though we saw a lot of games from them last week, that they're still able to show a couple of new tricks, even in the first round. They're not holding on to anything for those all-important games towards the end of playoffs just yet. Remains to be seen what else they're sitting on, but it's nice to see good ideas from that, and Lugia, you know, other regions using a lot more Hulk, wanting to see a bit more in EMEA. So excited where this series is going to go. Tetris, the first map so far in our first day of playoffs. But before we go to map 2, a very quick break, so don't go anywhere. Peps, with their back to the wall, have to have a map choice now, so they get to take us pretty much wherever they want other than the domination maps. And it's looking to be, apparently, Central Park, which, Tetcher, I think it's the least popular map that we've seen so far in EMEA. Probably not because of, like, dislike or disdain for it or anything like that. Probably because teams have just wanted to hold on to showing what they play on this map full stop. And Peps, well, they haven't played it, so the fact that they're picking it feels a bit of a Hail Mary, honestly.
If that is what they're going for, it would be interesting. I would have expected maybe a Midtown if we're going for any of these like Convoy or Convergence, which of course they have to go for one of them. But Midtown is a map where you can play a lot more defensively, and Peps have played a little bit more often of these big spawn hold setups. So we'll see if this is where they decide to go. The side of Central Park, it does have some very good defensive spots. That first point is a massive zoning potential for trying to prevent people from getting really high aggressive pushes on that first setup, and you can hold there a little more efficiently than some of the other Convergence maps.
And it's a really good map for flyers too. So yeah, Central Park is exactly where we're going to be heading. Team Peps, I think, leading the line on the picks and bans as well. This first one, even if we see a team lock in early, they are going to be revealed to both teams at the same time, kind of like they were there, right? So they both locked in. So it's the same again. Zero Tenacity wanted to try to get the Magneto away from the likes of Beetle, DRP as well. But I think it's a case of, like, we've seen the majority of work done from Ducky over on the EMEA Frost, so that's why Team Peps are looking to take it out. But also DRP would also prefer to get their hands over on the EMEA Frost themselves if they can help it. But I do think that this first part of the draft, looking pretty much typical of what we expect, only leans in the direction of Zero Tenacity. I think both teams are pretty flexible, Tetcher, but Zero Tenacity have a lot of like sort of tricks up their sleeve that can cause problems for Peps later down the line.
I think you're right there. They have characters like the weird solo Vanguard composition they had with Lugia swapping over to a Wolverine, and this being a pretty fantastic Wolverine map because you have this big enclosed area in the first push and these big ramps where you can wrap around very effectively later on. So there is a chance that we will see that. And we have actually seen Peps, though. They are not a huge fan of the Wolverine. They have in some cases banned Wolverine before characters like Loki and Luna Snow in the past, in these earlier rounds, before we started seeing these bans onto the Cloak and Dagger, for example. The Punisher will get banned out as a target against Knuten, as of course they were able to unleash a lot of damage.
Smash Desk can also play it. You could see them sort of hover over protecting Psylocke for themselves to just give something for Leaf to play. But if the Human Torch is banned out, this is a really good Torch map. Just flyers on the second point if you can get there. It's just so much suppressive fire. With both teams banning out Loki, it's not going to find all that much success in the end. So far, 010's draft looking exactly the same as it did over on Hell's Heaven. Here, they did protect the Punisher, but now obviously they're not able to. Are they going to protect the Torch? You could also get the Mantis or the Atom. The Torch is going to be protected. So again, pick your poison. What are you going to have to deal with if you're Team Peps? Right now, they banned out the Mantis last time. Do you risk it? Do you go for something that might be a little bit more hard-hitting, like banning out the Luna Snow? But if you ban out the Luna Snow, then you get Knuten going over towards the Adam Warlock, and then you run triple strategists.
Could make all the difference.
And we are immediately seeing a little bit of a move over Aura Stealer onto that Mantis. Let's see which way they go on the side of Zero Tenacity. Like you said, Knuten onto the Adam Warlock. They have the Mantis, and they are just running a sort of double version of the triple res with just the Adam Mantis damage boost and, of course, that hit scan that Adam Warlock is to just try and snipe Leaf, who will be counter going on a Human Torch, something they are very comfortable with. And both teams have been allowed onto this Invisible Woman with the priority onto Cloak and Dagger. Invisible Woman is sometimes neglected in these cases, but Fantastic Force for a Human Torch, Guardian Barrier to protect flyers, and of course characters like Hela or Punisher if they are trying to get if people try and focus in on them. It is a good setup to try and run here. Both these compositions look quite strong, but I'm a big fan of Adam Warlock in the current meta, so I am leaning a little bit in favor of Zero Tenacity just due to how sticky they have set themselves up to be, how hard they're going to be to take off of the point.
Yeah, I mean, they are an irritating team, and they've put together some fantastic attacking sides. That's where they're going to be beginning on this one. Team Peps choosing to be on the defense to begin with too. Has to be a strong hold here. You have to be looking at Leaf. He's typically the flexible one, but a Torch versus Torch is looking to be the case. Smashnez up against Leaf up in the sky, and it's the job of Hardest and Knuten to shut them down.
Creeping on in, looking for an early bit of zoning. Smashnez playing very aggressive. There's that damage boost from the Mantis for Knuten. Cosmic Clusters just trying to unleash a big chunk of damage into the front line. Already we're seeing a big aggressive push up from Zero Tenacity, who sent Lugia up to the high ground using Ducky and a little bit of a jetpack from the rocket that they had in spawn to try and get a quick rollout onto the point. Winnie has to back away though, as we are seeing Leaf currently uncontested, is creating a pretty solid zone, but Zero Tenacity have broken the containment and are on the point. They've already forced Peps into this hallway and are taking full control of what is a very difficult first point to capture sometimes.
You've just sort of allowed Ducky to really get involved and get stuck in, quite literally. Playing on the Groot, dug his heels in, that the roots are spawning underneath to really put him in a great spot to just fight in a corridor like that. I think the draft as well has sort of put Beetle in a position where if he's just stuck on Doctor Strange, he's also a fantastic Vanguard that can play a lot more of those like brawlier, disruptive Vanguards like Captain America. Almost feels that you nerve him a little bit by just having him be a bit of a shield bot. But DRP has a lot more pressure on him being on the Ember Frost, and this is a hard area to fight. If Zero Tenacity can keep that momentum, this could be a very, very quick second point.
They're already pushing forward incredibly aggressively. Spawn Bomb down to the low ground. Hardest looking for a bionic hook, unable to find some. Ducky does get locked down, but again is tanking through beautifully. This triple strategist composition, very difficult to really get through the initial burst setup here. And Zero Tenacity straggling Prison, Supernova, faded both worlds to try and absorb it, but the damage output from this torch is so high, forcing them all to stay grouped up, which means there's a good setup for the second that faded both worlds ends for a great group wall to try and punish. There is going to be the karmic revival from Knuten, as Smashnez was taken out quite early in this fight, and they're forced to bring it back as Media M will snipe out Larry.
Oh, this is great from Zero Tenacity to keep themselves going. Karmic Revival means that more ultimates pretty much free online consecutively, all lining up, but still on the right-hand side, it seems to be just the red of Zero Tenacity filling up the board. Knuten still able to keep on going, and a Strangling Prison for Ducky being built up very quickly. You can just see he's on the edge of being on like 1 HP, and Larry eventually knocks him over the side. Same with Lugia. They're both going to be going down, and Peps take a sigh of relief up until now because they're able to use the portal to try and contest this. It is just Smashnez here, and he has to give out.
Has that Guardian Barrier. Fantastic Force 8 seconds away for a little bit of extra healing as they tried to siege in from the sky. The cart was held in what was a very good looking fight for Zero Tenacity, but like you say, there was a little bit of control and zoning from Team Peps, so they were able to stagger quite effectively. Knuten creeping up to the high ground here, looking for a wraparound to get a big burst of this Cosmic Cluster. Great bionic hook onto Ducky, but the sustain, the healing output is keeping them so healthy, and that Straggling Prison already back up. Knuten needs to be careful as they've already used that cocoon. They can't afford to get blown up again yet.
How did Knuten survive that? Strangler Prison again thrown in, and just there's too much focus up on the high ground. The Smashnez just mows down Leaf. And the bad side of Team Peps in that last fight is using the portal when they did over from Beetle. Meant that they don't have it for like an engage after this. So just Zero Tenacity needed a good fight. And Smashnez, he's very close to having a Supernova, but the other side of it is when you have this like Guardians comp, Oasis is damage boosting Smashnez when he ults. So that sort of like just splash damage, it can be really irritating, becomes a big problem for the supports of Team Peps. The strategist ults are on, they don't want to use it yet, they just want to keep these fights and keep the time rolling down. But 4 minutes on the board for Z10 to put this one to bed.
Supernova going to be burned, even though Leaf is directly in their face, using the Flaming Media to get out of danger. Invisible Boundary to try and keep Smashnez up in this fight. Media M to look for the turnaround. Ivocamon is completely blocked as Larry is sniped in the first fight. Beetle and Hardest are taken down. Psionic Seduction to try and buy time for Team Peps. But Zero Tenacity are in full control right now. They still have Karmic Revival. Even if they lose someone in this fight, they are smashing through this. They lost nothing. Beetle has swapped onto the Groot to try and buy some time, but this is Zero Tenacity cruising forward right now. Team Peps, they're swapping desperately. Here comes the Star-Lord to try and buy
Prison. Oh, that was a Kobe from distance up on the high ground, boosting himself up with a wall to just see over the top, and it's just pushing all the way to the spawn doors for Team Peps. You have to see the supernova used from Leaf, but his focus isn't on the ground, it's on the targets up in the sky. So he takes out Smashnez. He's looming right above where this Comet Revival is. That's almost just an arrogant, cocky spot for Canuta to just place it there. So it should be free damage, but still, it's Peps losing numbers here. You've got the Fate of Both Worlds from Larry, and the supernova enhanced for Smashnez. Might have waited for this ultimate to subside before he uses it, but Zero Tenacity have to reset. Oh, that was close from Peps.
Under 5 meters is where that cart peaked, but Zero Tenacity, they still have 2.5 minutes left to regroup up. We've seen how quickly Ducky has been building these straggling prisons, but Beetle will have theirs first. Hardest swapping to that Star-Lord to try and duel the Human Torch in the air. Star-Lord is so good at taking these 1v1s versus other flyers. It's a fantastic pickup, just trying to keep the focus going, and with that being the main damage dealer, Newton is adding some supplementary with that hit scan and that Cosmic Cluster. They are getting zoned out a little bit, and they can't keep up alone. Smashnez trying to create an opening, group walls to split the team in two, but DRP just a little too tanky at this stage.
It's really a case of who's going to move first. Visible boundary for Aura Steal is going to be the main thing for Team Peps, but this damage, this output, especially in Strangling Prison, even in the middle of a support strategist ultimate like that, it's not enough to deal with the damage. And now Galactic Legend from Hardest trying to clear and find something, but it's not enough. Zero Tenacity, it's pretty much a lot of numbers on the board. The absolute damage that they're throwing down at Team Peps, it's unrelenting, and they're able to finish out the map.
Time to switch things up.
And that fight came down to, once again, an incredible straggling prison, setting up for the supernova, and they were able to utilize their strategist ultimates to make sure that Smashnez stayed up and get that focus onto Hardest. This is Zero Tenacity in their incredible, just adjustable playstyle. We saw them play a little slower role with that Punisher, the entire strategy being protect the Punisher. This strategy is all about make our way in with just how sustaining we are, and then wombo over and over again with some of the fastest building ultimates in the game, just due to how they play. Ducky and Smashnez were always in sync and were able to just get blow-ups over and over again.
20k damage from Smashnez, and I'd love a stat for the Marvel Rivals devs to just be able to sort of see like the stuff like Terra Cape, how much damage is done off the back of a Terra Cape, that extra like 28% damage boost that it gives, but also Inspire, because Oasis, all they have to do is look up, Inspire Smashnez, and Smashnez is like, all right, and everybody is just eliminated. It's just literal limbo. Magic is living in this zone. That's how much fire is on the ground from Smashnez here. 30-degree weather, a little bit hot for us Brits to deal with, but Smashnez comfortable. And it's his time in the sun so far. Peps have a lot of work to do.
I do not appreciate this level of immersion of the Human Torch just spilling into my room, but Team Peps going to attempt to spill onto this first point, bringing out the Ultron like you said. They're committing to some heavy damage. All of their strategies here are quite high up in the damage output, but with no Adam Warlock, they are just going to use this Ultron to try and just give themselves a second aerial. For the meantime, Smashnez playing high up, utilizing the cover. You mentioned how good flyers are on this map, just due to how vertically it's built with all these pillars, with the castle itself acting as fantastic cover to dash back and forth between and Smashnez using it to great effect.
Yeah, it's the sort of battle of the triple strategists, really. And now it's just see how annoying Smashnez has been, and the Invisible Woman really finding her success here, I'd say, from winning just the extra little bit of shields and able to deal with the mitigation when the focus starts to turn onto you. But this is good. You got the Rage of Ultron being used from Hardest and now Larry, Fate of Both Worlds. It doesn't matter too much that the strategist ultimates are comboed in a certain way, but dealing with these Ducky Strangling Prisons is a problem. When you got the Supernova and the Inspires on both characters, I think nothing can keep Peps alive in these moments. And you look at the screen, who can deal with this?
Everything is pain. Everything is destruction. They've got the point control. Here comes the counter-strangling prison. Karmic Revival, point blank on that point, but no one was even taken down. It was a preemptive measure. In that fight, the only people who went down were Knuten, who cocooned, and Oasis, who cocooned. We're finally seeing Team Peps getting close to taking out Ducky, but it's just not enough. Smashness literally chases down the Ultron. Hardest is picked off, and Smashness holding the high ground. This is Zero Tenacity with the zone forcing them right back to the first choke.
They're switching over towards the Bucky right now. Leaf over on the Wolverine. The fastball might be able to hit Smashness out the sky, but neither the Vanguard's budging. Silent Seduction available for DRP. And no progression made on the point. Half that time is already gone, and the Silent Seduction trying to get out to Smashness. That's a great dive to just avoid the line of sight, and the fate of both worlds for Peps. It's go time for them realistically. You've got the Soul Resurgence being used from Oasis and another Strangling Prison. There's just no answer to it. Again, Smashness, Supernova. It's an easy combo, and Peps just flat out do not have an answer.
They did burn quite a few abilities, but so did Team Peps. 99%. Hello, Squirrel.
Me, that's just pain.
My face went Supernova again. The zoning is so effective for Zero Tenacity. They did lose Knuten, but they have plenty of time for them to walk back to this fight. They are always staggering. They've still got Invisible Boundary up. This is Team Peps' potential last chance here. Strangling Prison is about to be up. They will very soon have Last Stand. This is where they can try and turn this with Kraken Impact on the board. They have to make the most of this. If Knuten is not careful about where they put this Karmic Revival, then Hardest is about to have an absolute field day.
Yeah, it seems that really it's a case of the Strangler Prisons now. Invisible Boundary going to be used. There's a Strangler Prison, and then the combination in hand with Meteor M trying to buy a bit more space, but it was a Kraken's Impact from Hardest. Doesn't really connect onto anybody, so the reset's not going to be coming on through. Even Last Stand used from Leaf, it's not enough. It's him going down, and even if there are people eliminated on the side of Zero Tenacity, Knuten has the Karmic Revival. Just look at this. It's a crazy amount of damage from Human Torch, a character that was first banned so often, might be on the list again when they see this combination start to come together. DRP though has found some space and enough time at least for Leaf. No! The portal was trying to come in the end and people got off the point. It looked like Peps might be able to go for another fight there, Tetcher. But it's a 2-0 for Z10.
DRP tried to buy time, tried to delay, but forced off the point at the last moment. The portal not coming out in time. Literally, if you touch the point a second before or a couple seconds before overtime starts, then you get that overtime tick and you start going into the yellow bar. But in this case, they were fighting off it for so long to get that pickup that they effectively weren't on the point for too long, allowing the 2-0 victory for Zero Tenacity. They will move on to the bracket, and Peps will make their way down to the lower bracket. Not out yet, but they have an opportunity to make their way into that grand finals. But Zero Tenacity looking incredibly strong. And yeah, Ducky on this Groot in a tight enclosed space, that is horrific.
He sort of knew the win conditions that he needed to play around as Groot. Like, played in the right spots. You've got Human Torches in the sky, and obviously Groot can't deal with those all that much. So being able to just pick where these engagements are happening, but it's more of the same for Zero Tenacity. The way that they were able to be the top seed from their group is how they're able to influence the draft. And if you can take out stuff like Mantis, the Human Torch was available this time too. That's why it was banned out the first time from Team Peps, because that Inspire Supernova combination alongside Ducky Throne in the Strangling Prison, even the highest output of healing that you can get from these strategist ultimates are not enough to keep people going. And Z10 are feeling confident there. I think Peps gave them a big scare over on domination, but on maps like this, what we've not seen them play, they're clearly very prepared. And I think it's going to be tricky for teams to find an answer for them, most certainly in the draft phase.
And this is the power of Zero Tenacity. They cause trauma, effectively. The first game, you mentioned, that torch was banned out, but it was let through this time because Knuten caused trauma, playing the Punisher, and was able to create such a dominating presence that it was banned out in game number 2. And if this was a best of 5, we'd probably see that flip back again, because Smashness is now causing British Summer trauma on that Human Torch, creating massive zoning potential, huge bursts with the Mantis team up. Zero Tenacity not living up to their name at all, just consistently always having these ultimates ready when they're needed and showing all the tenacity to stay on the point, especially with the fact they kept reviving.
Yeah, I mean, I love that as a potential meta name of just British Summer Trauma. The BST really does sum up stuff at the moment, but it really does feel on that note that like Z10 is still hotting up. I was worried going into this series, Tetcher, that maybe there's an element of them being caught out by Peps, because Peps are individually very strong. They've played together a long time, and not only in Marvel Rivals, but beyond it too. It really did feel if there was a team that could just catch them with just some of the coordination that they had available to them, it might be Peps. But honestly, once we got to some of those like objective focused maps, it was pretty easy from Z10 because they had all of the answers both in the draft and outside of it.
Yeah, it came down to the draft setting themselves up, like you said. I'm amazed that we saw that Wolverine come out a little bit later. We talked about how strong Wolverine is, but it's just not something that Peps have brought out very often. They've played it, but it's Leaf who's been the one who plays it, and Leaf was the one on the torch, which was kind of important for their counter opportunities, for their counter play style, to try and just push through these front lines. And then, like you say, in-game, being able to position Canuto correctly, damage boost onto torch. We keep reiterating it because it just hurt. It was just so much damage, so much control, so much zoning. The group walls making it incredibly difficult for the team to actually play well together. Even if Supernova wasn't enough, Groot Thornlash walls was just bursting through everything.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's why, like, we know a lot more teams are putting like a protect on the Loki first. We spoke to Nevix about it, and he was like, if I speak, I'm in big trouble when it comes to like revealing their strategies. That might be another reason, right? Because regen domain able to keep people alive, and then you're able to just get a copy onto an opponent's Luna or a Cloak and Dagger. Surely one of those two is going to be in the server to copy. So I guess we'll find out. But we've got an interview with the man in the sky himself, Smashnez. I think if you can hear me, Smashnez, my biggest question is, how do people beat you in draft? Because it feels that people haven't got an answer to you. If you ban out the Torch and the Mantis, you just go something else. Like, just tell the other teams, like, how are they able to beat you in draft? Because it doesn't seem to be an answer.
Yeah, well, we're just a really versatile team. We have a draft for every single team we're gonna play against, and yeah, just play everything.
So in game number 2, you guys had maximum control over the objective, but you ran that Human Torch over the Star-Lord, which has been the more consistent in the triple revive meta that we have seen creep in from some teams, but we have seen it run with the Torch. I'd love your explanation as to when each one is viable and why, in your case, you do prefer the Torch.
Well, I think Star-Lord is like a really fake character. I think that character is really, really bad. And Torch is really OP. And I happen to be really good on Torch, so we just prefer playing that. And also, you get so much more control over the map being able to fly permanently. It's really strong.
Makes sense for sure. I think you had some really good combos as well with the Mantis, right? You just get inspires at the right time, Ducky strangling prisoning people, so it's just an easy target to throw everything you have available at them. What has been like the main focus for you guys going in from Sunday, where you topped your group with a nice series against Beba Patapim, to today to playoffs? Like, you don't need to reveal too much, but I imagine with a team like Z10 that you guys aren't getting complacent. You want to be the top dogs in EMEA, or at least in that discussion. But what do you focus on, like, other than preparation against other teams?
We wanted to make sure we were actually like ready for these 2 matches. So we took 1 day off. And then we were back on the grind again, coming up on the drafts, figuring out what we want to play against the different teams. And as you can see, it's working pretty well so far.
So I guess we should ask about the different teams. Your next matchup will be against either Rad Esports or All Business. Do you have a preference, and would you like to explain why if you do?
Well, we would prefer playing against All Business. We've already shown that we can win against them pretty clearly, with a 2-0 and a 3-0 in the past. Rad is also a really, really good team, so if we do end up playing against them, it would be a fun match.
I think, lastly from me, Smashnez, last week against Bubba Patapin was like a really good showing from you individually. We had a lot of focus on Knuten because he's like, the personality of the team. He seems to be the face of it. Had stuff like the Iron Man, like 4K, 5K that he got the other day too. But I think that like you were forced off the torch a lot. Like we saw Bubba Patapin first banning torch to get you away from it. Yet you showed up on Punisher. You showed up on Namor. I guess realistically, it's like you're showing. What was that like? Because it felt like you had a lot of comfort on the roles that you were playing prior to that final, but then you were the target. Like, was it a bit stressful to have to move on to other characters, or were you just like, I'm versatile enough to move on to whatever?
For that specific match, we weren't really prepared to play other stuff. We got really caught off guard by Patapim in our first match. But then we came back to the drafting board. We figured out, okay, what can we play to counter them? And yeah, I've just been practicing. I can play most of the heroes in the game.
A bold statement, but if you have any last statements to say before we let you go and celebrate with your team, what do you have to say to everyone watching?
You should look out for us. We're gonna do really good.
Thank you very much, Smash, for jumping in with us today. Once again, congratulations. We'll let you go back to celebrate with your team.
Thank you.